wealthy businessman stands at the grand entrance of a luxury hotel, his voice sharp, his words dripping with contempt as he berates a seemingly homeless man. Guests glance over, some pretending not to notice, others watching in awkward silence. But what this arrogant millionaire doesn't realize is that the person he's humiliating is none other than Hollywood legend Keanu Reeves himself. How did Keanu handle this public humiliation, and what consequences awaited the businessman for his cruel behavior? The sun cast a golden glow over Los Angeles, its soft morning light bouncing off the sleek glass facade of Opal Heights Hotel. A taxi glided up to the entrance, merging with the city's symphony of honking horns and distant chatter. Inside the vehicle, partially concealed behind dark sunglasses, sat Keanu Reeves. Fame in LA was as common as palm trees swaying in the breeze, and for someone like him, staying under the radar was a quiet necessity. As the car rolled to a stop, a uniformed doorman swiftly approached, his polished demeanor unwavering. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Opal Heights. Allow me to assist with your luggage." Keanu offered a polite nod, stepping out as the doorman retrieved his belongings, a single, well-worn suitcase and a leather backpack that had clearly seen the world. Stretching slightly from the long flight, Keanu took in the grandeur of the hotel, the revolving doors constantly in motion, the stream of affluent guests, the scent of fresh flowers blending with high-end perfumes lingering in the air. At the reception desk, a young woman greeted him with a warm yet practiced smile. But the moment he removed his sunglasses, recognition flashed across her face. To her credit, she maintained her composure, though Keanu caught the subtle tremor in her hands as she processed his check-in. "Welcome to Opal Heights, Mr. Reeves. We're honored to have you with us. Will you be attending the luncheon gala today?" He shook his head, his voice as calm as ever. "No, I'm just here to unwind for a few days. Taking a break before diving back into work." The receptionist nodded, fingers moving deftly across the keyboard. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. We pride ourselves on offering a peaceful retreat. Please rest assured that our privacy policy is strictly enforced, media access is prohibited, and discretion is our priority." Keanu listened patiently before offering a small nod. "That's good to know. I just need some peace and quiet." A young bellboy named James stepped forward, his wide-eyed expression betraying his excitement as he took Keanu's luggage. Though clearly starstruck, he maintained his professionalism, leading the way toward the elevators. The ride-up was silent, save for the soft chime announcing each passing floor. James, struggling to contain his awe, kept sneaking glances, but Keanu remained unfazed, watching the changing numbers on the display. Finally, they reached the penthouse. As James swiped the keycard and stepped aside, Keanu entered the suite, a masterpiece of understated luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the city, while plush furnishings in muted tones invited relaxation. A sleek bar stood in one corner, and a state-of-the-art entertainment system occupied another. James carefully set the luggage down near the bedroom. "Your suite includes a jacuzzi tub and a rain shower," he explained, still fighting the urge to gush. Keanu took in the space with a quiet appreciation. But what he didn't know was that his moment of solitude was about to be interrupted by an encounter that would put his legendary humility and patience to the ultimate test. Keanu stepped into the opulent surroundings of his penthouse suite, taking in the refined luxury. The city skyline stretched before him through floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in the soft morning light. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a generous tip and handed it to James, the young bellboy. "Thank you for your help," Keanu said warmly. James's eyes widened at the amount, his voice almost faltering. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I hope you have a restful stay. If you need anything, just call the front desk." As the door closed behind him, Keanu took a slow breath, savoring the quiet. He walked through the suite, appreciating the attention to detail, the king-sized bed, the marble and chrome bathroom with a shower big enough for three and a tub that could double as a small pool. The temptation of a hot shower was too strong to resist. Stripping off his travel-worn clothes, he stepped under the steaming water, letting the warmth soothe his muscles, washing away the exhaustion from the long flight. He felt the tension drain from his body, replaced by a quiet sense of calm. After drying off, Keanu pulled on a pair of soft sweatpants and an old, comfortable t-shirt. He was looking forward to a day of uninterrupted relaxation, maybe catching up on some reading or watching a movie. But just as he sank into the plush sofa, he became aware of something, muffled voices and footsteps echoing through the hallway outside. The noise grew, mixed with bursts of laughter and excited chatter. Even through the thick walls, he could hear snippets of conversation, guests discussing their outfits, speculating about who they'd meet. It was the gala. Keanu had deliberately avoided looking into the event when booking his stay. Hollywood social gatherings weren't exactly his idea of rest. But now, hearing the energy building just beyond his door, curiosity tugged at him. Maybe a quick walk around the hotel wouldn't hurt. Just to get a sense of the place, see what all the fuss was about. Slipping on a pair of sandals, he stepped into the corridor and straight into a wave of excitement. The hallway, lined with elegant wallpaper and plush carpeting, was alive with movement. Guests, many of whom he recognized from past industry events, glided past him toward the elevators, their laughter and animated discussions filling the space. Keanu exchanged polite nods and brief greetings, noticing the knowing smiles and "see you later" comments thrown his way. They assumed he was here for the event. That only made him more curious. Following the steady stream of people, Keanu found himself near the grand ballroom. The space was a hive of activity, event staff rushing to put final touches in place, towering floral arrangements being wheeled in, the scent of fresh flowers mixing with the polished wood and expensive colognes of the arriving elite. As he took in the scene, a well-dressed man approached, his face lighting up in recognition. "Mr. Reeves." The man extended his hand enthusiastically. "I'm Raymond, the event coordinator. I had no idea you were attending." Keanu shook his hand with a polite smile. "I'm actually just staying at the hotel. Got curious about all the commotion." Raymond's enthusiasm didn't waver, if anything, it doubled. "Oh, you're in for a treat. This is going to be the event of the year." He gestured dramatically. "The biggest names in Hollywood are here today, investors, producers, top-tier celebrities. It's all about pitching and funding the next blockbuster films." Keanu's gaze shifted to the banners and massive screens decorating the area, all featuring the same face, a man with sharp features and a confident, almost cocky smile. "Who's that?" Keanu asked, nodding toward the display. "Ah, that's Victor Prescott," Raymond said, his voice taking on a note of admiration. "The man behind this entire gala. A tech mogul turned entertainment powerhouse. He made billions in the tech world, and now he's setting his sights on Hollywood." Raymond leaned in slightly, as if sharing a secret. "His latest passion project? Titan Rising. A biopic about a billionaire's rise to global dominance. It's loosely based on his own life, overcoming ordinary struggles to achieve extraordinary success." As they spoke, Raymond guided Keanu toward a nearby table stacked high with glossy books. Picking one up, he handed it to Keanu. "This is Victor's autobiography. It's been a bestseller for weeks now." Keanu glanced down at the cover, Prescott's smirking face staring back at him. What Keanu didn't know was that his path was about to cross with Victor Prescott's in a way that no one at this high-profile event could have expected. And when it did, the entire night would take a turn no one saw coming. Keanu turned the book over in his hands, eyeing the glossy cover. From Streets to Skyscrapers, the Victor Prescott story. The same confident smirk from the banners stared back at him. Raymond, the event coordinator, leaned in slightly, his tone hopeful. "So, Mr. Reeves, since you're here, would you like to attend the gala? I can handle your registration right away." Keanu offered an apologetic smile. "I appreciate the offer, Raymond, but I'm actually here for some rest. Taking a break between projects." Raymond's face fell for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered. "Of course, I understand. It's just, well, it's such a big opportunity. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider? The networking possibilities alone." I'm sure, Keanu said firmly, but kindly. Thank you, though. Raymond nodded, trying to mask his disappointment. Well, if you change your mind, just let me know. Oh, and we have a private online broadcast for the event. If you'd like, I can set it up on your phone or laptop so you can watch from your room. Consider it a favor. Keanu considered for a moment, then nodded. I'll think about it. Thanks for the information, and for the book. As they parted ways, Keanu made his way toward the hotel's lobby lounge. He needed a quiet spot to process everything he had just learned. The lounge, with its comfortable armchairs and dim lighting, felt like the perfect escape from the high-energy buzz of the gala preparations. Settling into a plush chair in the corner, Keanu ordered a drink. As he waited, he observed the steady flow of high-profile arrivals checking in at the front desk. Excitement hung thick in the air, with each new guest causing a ripple of whispers among the staff and other attendees. His drink arrived, accompanied by a delicate pastry on fine china. He thanked the server with a warm nod, taking a small bite of the sweet morsel before his gaze fell back on Victor's autobiography. The book sat next to his coffee, its sleek cover catching the light. Keanu hadn't planned on reading it, but curiosity got the best of him. It couldn't hurt to know more about the man behind all this hype, he reasoned. With a small shrug, he picked it up and began flipping through the pages. The table of contents promised an inspiring story: Victor's rise from humble beginnings, his first tech ventures, his eventual domination of the industry. But as Keanu read the opening chapter, his interest quickly began to wane. The writing was self-congratulatory, packed with anecdotes designed more to impress than to inspire. Every page seemed to scream, "Look how brilliant I am," rather than offering any real insight or struggle. With a quiet sigh, Keanu closed the book. Enough of that. After settling his bill and charging it to his room, he prepared to return to his penthouse. But just as he stood, something caught his attention, a commotion near the hotel entrance. Intrigued, he moved closer. That's when he saw him, Victor Prescott. In person, the billionaire looked just as polished as his publicity photos, his designer suit crisp, his presence commanding. But there was something else, something the cameras didn't capture. A coldness in his eyes. A curl of disdain at the corners of his mouth. And right now, that disdain was directed at the hotel staff. This is unacceptable. Victor snapped, gesturing angrily toward the entrance. I made it very clear, I don't want to see any of those people hanging around the hotel during my event. Keanu followed Victor's gaze and saw what had sparked his outrage. A small group of homeless individuals stood in the courtyard near the entrance. They weren't causing any trouble, just quietly keeping to themselves. But Victor's expression was one of pure disgust. A hotel security guard, clearly intimidated, hesitated before responding. Sir, we've been doing our best to keep the area clear, but... Well, your best isn't good enough, Victor cut in coldly. His voice lowered, but in the marble-floored lobby, his words still carried. This is why we need stricter rules on who's allowed near places like this. These people, they're an eyesore, a blight on our event. Keanu felt a surge of unease at Victor's words. He glanced around, expecting to see shock or disapproval on the faces of other guests. But instead, most people looked away. A few even nodded in quiet agreement. Under Victor's orders, the hotel security moved in, beginning to clear the entrance. Keanu stood there, watching, a slow-burning anger rising in his chest. Victor Prescott may have built an empire. He may have had power, money, and influence. But in that moment, standing in the grand lobby of a hotel that catered to the world's elite, Keanu saw him for what he truly was. A man who had forgotten where he came from. And Keanu? He wasn't about to just stand there and let it slide. What happened next would leave everyone, Victor included, completely speechless. Keanu's unease deepened as he watched the scene unfold. The homeless individuals, their meager belongings hastily gathered, were being herded away from the hotel entrance like unwanted debris. Security moved with cold efficiency, their faces hardened by routine, while Victor Prescott stood by, observing the process with visible disdain. "Look at them," he muttered to no one in particular, his voice dripping with contempt. "No ambition, no drive. They choose to live like this and expect handouts from those of us who actually worked for our success." A small circle of well-dressed individuals, likely Victor's associates, nodded in agreement, murmuring their own dismissive remarks. Their eagerness to appease him was almost nauseating. Keanu clenched his jaw, feeling an uncomfortable knot form in his stomach. He expected at least some outrage from the other guests, disapproval, shock, anything. But instead, most people avoided looking, some even nodding along as if Victor's words were just another casual business observation. As the last of the homeless individuals were forced out of the courtyard, Victor turned and strode deeper into the hotel, his entourage trailing behind him. He passed close to where Keanu stood, but didn't spare him a glance, dismissing him as just another guest in casual clothes, irrelevant to his world. But Keanu was watching. And what he saw was a man who had built his entire public image on an inspirational rags-to-riches story, a self-made billionaire who supposedly understood struggle, yet had no empathy for those who were still struggling. The contrast between his public persona and his real-life actions was so stark, it made Keanu's skin crawl. For a moment, Keanu considered just walking away. He wasn't here to pick fights. He was here to rest. But something in his gut told him he couldn't just let it go. With a deep breath, he made a decision. Instead of heading for the elevators, he turned and walked toward the hotel's revolving doors. He didn't have a plan, only the undeniable urge to do something. The moment he stepped outside, the California sun hit his face, bright and warm. But the difference between the world inside the hotel and the reality just outside its doors was jarring. And then, he saw it. A tense scene was unfolding near the courtyard. A security guard, his face flushed with irritation, was standing over a homeless woman. His voice was sharp, his posture aggressive. "Look, lady," he snapped. "I'm just doing my job. It's not my duty to wake you up nicely, like your mother would." The woman, her clothes worn but clean, lifted her chin. She was afraid, but she refused to cower. "I have as much right to be here as anyone else," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I wasn't bothering anyone." The guard scoffed. "This is private property. You're not a hotel guest, so you need to move along." Their voices carried across the courtyard, drawing nervous glances from passing hotel guests, most of whom hurried their pace to avoid the confrontation. Keanu watched, his heart tightening at the sight of the woman's quiet desperation against the guard's unchecked authority. He had seen enough. Taking a steady breath, Keanu stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. Both the guard and the woman turned to him. The guard's eyes widened in recognition. His aggressive posture faltered slightly. "Mr. Reeves," he stammered, suddenly unsure of himself. Keanu gave a small nod, but kept his attention on the situation at hand. "I couldn't help overhearing," he said evenly. "Is there a problem here?" The guard straightened, trying to regain his authoritative stance. "Just doing my job, sir. We've had complaints about homeless people loitering in the area. I've been given orders to clear them out." Keanu's eyes flickered toward the woman. She was watching him warily, her hands gripping the strap of a worn canvas bag. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you all right?" She hesitated, clearly unsure if she could trust him. I was just resting," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble. The asphalt outside is so hot, and the hotel steps, they were cooler. I just needed a place to sit for a moment and catch my breath. But then I fell asleep." She took a hesitant step back, as if bracing herself for the worst. Keanu turned back to the guard. "I understand you have a job to do," he said, his voice steady. "But surely, there's a way to handle this with more compassion. This woman is a human being, deserving of respect, regardless of whether she's a hotel guest or not." The weight of Keanu's words hung in the air. The guard shifted uncomfortably. Keanu wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't being aggressive. But something about his calm, unwavering presence made it impossible to dismiss him. The question now was, how would the guard, the hotel, and even Victor Prescott respond when faced with someone unwilling to simply look away? What happened next, no one could have predicted. The security guard hesitated, torn between following orders and the quiet authority in Keanu's words. I suppose I could have been more polite, he admitted reluctantly. Keanu nodded with a small smile. That's all anyone can ask. Kindness costs nothing but can mean everything to someone struggling. The homeless woman, who had been silently watching, whispered, "Thank you," before turning to leave, her shoulders tense as if bracing for more hostility. Keanu's gaze followed her as she disappeared around the corner, his eyes landing on a worn gray blanket she had left behind. He bent down, picking it up. The fabric, softened from years of use, told a silent story of hardship. He glanced toward the street, but she was gone. "Want me to throw that away for you, sir?" the guard asked, eyeing the blanket distastefully. Keanu shook his head. "No. I'll wait here in case she comes back for it." As he settled onto the hotel steps, he noticed a hot dog vendor nearby. An idea formed. He bought a hot dog and coffee, then returned to his spot, placing the neatly folded blanket on his lap. He waited, hoping she would return. The contrast around him was stark. Guests in designer suits and glittering jewelry stepped past without a second glance, the lavish world of Hollywood colliding with the simple object in his hands. Then came the sharp click of expensive shoes. Victor Prescott emerged from the hotel, scanning the area to ensure his orders had been followed. When his gaze landed on Keanu, his face twisted in anger. "I thought we got rid of people like you this morning." Victor spat. "How dare you loiter outside my hotel? Don't you have a park bench somewhere?" Keanu, momentarily taken aback, glanced down at himself, comfortable clothes, the blanket on his lap, a casual coffee in hand. Victor had mistaken him for a homeless man. Rather than correcting him, Keanu decided to see where this would go. He took a slow sip of coffee and replied, "Nice to meet you, too." Victor's fury only grew. "Don't get smart with me. You people are all the same, lazy, wasting time begging instead of working. Do you even know who I am?" Keanu raised an eyebrow. "I have some idea." Victor sneered. "Then you should know better than to sit here. This is a respectable establishment, not a shelter." A crowd began to gather, drawn by the escalating scene. Victor, impatient with Keanu's calm demeanor, snapped at a nearby guard. "You! Get rid of this vagrant. Now!" The guard hesitated. He opened his mouth to speak, likely to explain who Keanu was, but Victor cut him off. "Useless. If you won't do your job, I'll do it myself." With that, Victor grabbed Keanu's arm, trying to yank him up. At that exact moment, a sleek black limousine pulled up. The door opened, and out stepped Emma Carlson, a renowned director, followed by press members eager for a shot of her arrival. Emma took one look at the scene, Victor Prescott manhandling what appeared to be a homeless man on the hotel steps, and gasped. "Wait a second, that's Keanu Reeves." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Victor's grip on Keanu's arm released as if burned. His expression flickered between shock, embarrassment, and panic. "What?" he stammered, his earlier bravado vanishing. Keanu stood slowly, brushing off his sleeve. He looked at Victor, his voice calm yet pointed. "You were saying?" The silence that followed was deafening. Cameras clicked, press members whispered, and Victor stood frozen, scrambling for words. "Mr. Reeves," he stuttered, I had no idea. This is a terrible misunderstanding." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Is it?" Victor nodded eagerly. "Yes, of course. We just have issues with, well, certain undesirable elements around the hotel. I was only trying to protect our guests." Keanu's gaze didn't waver. And if I had been one of those undesirable elements? Would that have made your behavior acceptable? Victor paled, noticing the cameras still rolling. Desperate, he turned to security. "Get those press out of here," he barked. "This hotel values discretion." The guards moved to clear the reporters, but it was too late. The damage was done. Keanu, no longer interested in Victor's excuses, spotted movement at the edge of the crowd. The homeless woman had returned, searching for something. Without hesitation, he stepped away from Victor, blanket in hand. "I believe this belongs to you," he said gently, holding it out. Her eyes widened. "You kept it," she whispered, stunned. Keanu smiled. "Of course. I'm sorry for how you were treated. You didn't deserve that." Emma Carlson, watching, shook her head. "Unbelievable," she muttered to her assistant. Victor Prescott, the man who built his brand on a rags-to-riches story, treating people like this? And Keanu Reeves, well, you can see for yourself. The whispers grew. Hotel guests and industry professionals compared Victor's words to Keanu's actions, and with each retelling, Victor's reputation crumbled further. Unable to handle the scrutiny, Victor stormed back inside, muttering bitterly, "Some people will do anything for attention, even pretend to care about the dregs of society." Keanu turned to him, his voice steady. "True respect isn't about public showmanship, Mr. Prescott. It's about how we treat others when we think no one is watching." Victor's face burned with humiliation as he disappeared into the hotel. The crowd murmured, speculation swirling about how this incident would impact Victor's career. Meanwhile, Keanu focused on the woman. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Isabel," she said softly. They sat and talked. She had lost her husband, then her home. Now, she was just trying to survive. Keanu reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet. "I'd like to help, if you'll let me." He handed her enough cash for temporary shelter and wrote down a number. "This is my assistant's contact. Call tomorrow. We'll find you training programs and job opportunities. Something sustainable." Isabel hesitated, then gripped the card. "I don't want charity," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "I want a chance." Keanu nodded. "That's exactly what I'm offering." She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "Thank you, Keanu." "Everyone deserves a chance," he replied. As she walked away, hope in her step, Keanu knew the real impact of today wasn't in Victor's downfall, it was in moments like this. Back in his hotel room, he called his assistant. "Patrick, I need your help with something important." "Of course, Keanu. What do you need?" "Find job programs for Isabel Morin. And look into organizations working on homelessness in LA. I want to help in a meaningful way." "I'll get right on it." Later, as Keanu watched the gala's live stream, he saw Victor standing alone, his influence fading. Meanwhile, Emma Carlson took the stage, calling for Hollywood to tell stories not just of personal success, but of compassion and humanity. Keanu smiled. Maybe today had been bigger than he thought. As he stood on his balcony, overlooking the glowing LA skyline, he realized the truth: real success isn't about wealth or power. It's about how we use it. And sometimes, the most impactful moments come when we least expect them.